Hello and welcome to 4x3 Gaming, where I'm going to be doing something totally original and having a look at old games I used to play when I was young. Now I'll mostly be talking about things from the 5th and 6th generation, and occasionally I'll maybe talk about some things from the 4th, so like Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, stuff like that. But mostly I'll be sticking with PS1, Dreamcast and original Xbox, because that's kind of the stuff I played. So there's a lot of ground to cover with those consoles, and I figure the first thing I should start with is the first game I ever actually owned for myself, which was Tom and Jerry on the Game Boy Color. So as far as tie-in games for franchises go, this one actually isn't that bad, at least for a generic platformer. It was published in 1999 by a company called Majesco, which is still actually an operating company who publish, well, stuff. Let me show you. The sheer number of games they've actually published is quite astonishing, frankly, and a lot of them are pretty recognisable names. I mean, there we go, great example right there, Gunmetal, and we'll definitely be getting onto that at some point. Let's have a look at some other stuff. Infected on the PSP, I kind of remember that being alright. Cooking Mama, a lot of Cooking Mama. Jaws Unleashed, and Sharknado, the video game. Anyway, back to Tom and Jerry. So the game starts out promising, with an alright rendition of the show's main theme and some decent art on the title screen and in the openings for each level. It's a good start, especially for those who actually are fans of the show. It's just a shame that the rest of the game is very, well, irrelevant. Granted, it's not exactly an easy task to convert this directly into a video game concept, at least on the Game Boy Color. And frankly, platforming games were pretty much tried and true for TV and movie tie-ins up to that point. So basically, fuck it, make it a platformer, throw in the characters from the show and boom, done. No, but in all seriousness, it is sadly one of the most generic things they could have done, so did they at least get the platforming gameplay right? Well, actually yes, they managed to make controls that were mostly solid. And by mostly I mean just barely good enough that you feel like you have control enough to blame yourself for some failure, but not quite enough to always say it was your own miscalculations. For example, Jerry likes to go fucking flying left and right after jumping. It's literally impossible for him to do slight movements, making shit like this fucking infuriating. But there is two sides to this, because it makes navigating the levels a lot more fun when you can jump for a goddamn mile and reach frankly absurd leap of faith style platforms that are littered throughout the game. Oh yeah, and seriously, fuck the arsehole who designed this section of level 2. These spikes were the #1 cause of death for me when I played this as a kid. I mean, I get it now that you can basically avoid all of them by going on the platforms above, but I was a retarded 5-year-old with the attention span of a goldfish, and in fact, not much has actually really changed in that regard. But you have to understand, as a kid, I'd already seen some fantastic 2D platformers like Sonic the Hedgehog and Abe's Odyssey, so naturally, when I saw something as visually and mechanically uninteresting as this, I just couldn't be bothered with it. Huh. Makes me sound like a spoiled fuck, actually. So, to sum the platforming up, it's mostly alright, but they really didn't understand how to best build levels for their controls. Sometimes. Something I can give them some credit for was that they tried to kind of add a story to the game, but it's pretty basic. Okay, so Jerry's kind of standing around minding his own business, and then you got Tuffy screaming out for help all throughout the goddamn house, he's a little grey mouse in a diaper. Tom hears this, naturally, and because of that, Tom makes a face that you wouldn't want anybody making when they hear a lost infant crying for help. So, it's your job, as in Jerry's, to find Tuffy and stop him getting, I guess, eaten. Also, this guy, yeah, he wasn't even trying. So, seeing as this is a Tom and Jerry game, you start off in the only place that makes sense, the streets of some city. Somewhere. Now, I don't want to be too nitpicky, even if it is the nature of these kinds of reviews, but let's just think about this for a second. As I said, I'm not exactly what you would call a fan of the show, but I, as well as anyone, could probably tell you that it mostly takes place in a house, not the pit and spike-laden streets of a random city. But we can look past that as, screw it, it is the first level. And it's pretty damn easy, but does an alright job at letting you get the basics down, at least. In fact, there are a few examples of good game design occasionally, but it's far and few between, and is almost always just the level easing you into a new enemy. For instance, if we skip to the next level, the park, you can get an example of them seemingly knowing what they're doing, and also fucking it up 2 seconds later. Literally in the first 10 seconds of the level. So the park introduces you to the flower, which is going to become a regular obstacle throughout the game. But it gives you a decent amount of space to safely jump over it, and it also lets you see that it will bite at you afterwards, assuming you didn't just run off. So you learn that both that you need to jump over these guys and that they're hostile, they're going to try and kill you if they can. As the level goes on, the jumps get harder and harder to pull off, because they kind of change it, make the slopes a bit higher, all these other things. And it's a fair learning curve for the player. But then they immediately fuck it up by donking you on the head with these fucking acorns without warning. Well, okay, you could say this is also good as it teaches the player that there are environmental challenges. Kinda like the first level, which did it in a far better way by letting you see it first, so it didn't feel bullshit and unfair when you got hit by something you weren't expecting. And I know you could say to me, well, the acorns kind of stick out and you did just say the first level taught you about this kind of shit, so why didn't you know? And I think my answer to that, honestly, would be that it's a fucking acorn. And yes, I guess I am saying that after explaining the introduction of biting sunflowers. More specifically, it's a smaller detail than the previous sewer grates and doesn't have any kind of tell to warn the player prior to stepping under it. The only way to actually avoid the damn things is to sprint up to it and bolt back to let it fall. Or you could just run past like most people probably would do, which kind of destroys my point. But not completely, because it's still likely that if you didn't take a hit from the first, you probably will from this next bit, especially when you consider acorns were only just introduced. Have a look. Okay, so let's just analyse this scene. If you avoided the first acorn by sprinting past it, then you now have a nanosecond to take in the fact that there are 2 more, one of which is lower, which would indicate it will hit you sooner, which it doesn't by the way, and there's also a flower just ahead of them on a slight slope, meaning your jump has to be precise or you're going to take a hit, and honestly, I think most, if not all, are going to take a hit here the first time they play, be it from the acorns or the flower. Now, I wouldn't say this part is horrendously designed, but for first-time players it's just going to be a frustrating lesson that leaves them feeling duped by the game. These kinds of things don't really happen throughout, but I think it paints a picture of a dev team that either got lucky with the good parts of the design, or just didn't quite know what they were doing. But needless to say, you continue on and you move on to level 3, but not before you have a gander at your score and play a card matching game that, while very quick and easy, actually feels rather tactile and pointless. But even still, it's a little tiny, minuscule amount of fun, and it adds to your overall score, which I guess back in the Wild West ye olde times of 1999 was great for the masses of kids and siblings that gave 2 shits about scoreboards and games. So this level's a little closer to the usual Tom and Jerry setting, but just not quite there yet. It's one that I think is actually pretty good in the design department, as it does depart at least slightly from the just hit right and jump occasionally tactic, and instead forces you to climb higher using another new mechanic, the drain pipes. This level also has the first required leap of faith to get to the end, but it does hint towards the jump being safe as the previous houses all share the same design, and you would have had to use this to your advantage before, so its placement isn't completely random to the level or the player. Okay, so I'm not going to cover every single level in loads of detail, as the whopping 10 levels would be too much for me to handle, but I will briefly cover each one because they're mostly unique and memorable. Mostly. Level 4 is actually inside the house, and so the next few levels in fact. The most notable thing about this one is that unlike the last 3 levels, it primarily focuses on vertical progression. And it's a little less linear, something later levels will actually incorporate much more. Also, elevators. Oh, and Tom, right here, at the end. What the fuck is up with that? I thought he was there to troll the shit out of players who only had like one hit left in them, but you finish the level before he can reach you, so it was just the devs trying to scare the shit out of people, I guess. Actually, this shit is plastered all over the game and is basically one of the most fucking wank parts of it, as yet again, it's another mechanic that will fuck you hard if you don't know where he's going to pop out. Anyway, level 5, and now the most interesting place in any house, the bathroom. Actually, you know what, the layouts for these levels just get more fucked up as we go. So this level's lots of bathtubs, and this shitty nonsense. And with level 6, they just said, fuck it, level design is balls anyway. Why design a level when you can design a shitty fucking maze? Also, they made me hate plates. It just, not good. Also, it's in a kitchen. Level 7, and here we are, the garage. By far the hardest level, based solely on the fact that they made an effort to make every jump a fucking travesty for you. Spikes, guillotines, and drops of water stand in your way. Oh, and shitty fucking jumps that rely way too heavily on trial and error. And this fucker. I'm serious, this level was the one that took the most attempts and actually got me pretty frustrated. I mean, it's not really hard, and for the most part the tactic is just to bolt through everything while you're invulnerable after taking a hit. The shameful thing is, I think this was them actually trying to make a hard level, but after realising they didn't know fuck about how to make a legitimately difficult level, they just threw a bunch of bullshit in. And on to level 8, which tones the pseudo difficulty down, thankfully, and actually seems to be what could be considered a sewer level. I mean, if it is, it's the nicest looking one I've ever played through. Hell, it's actually probably the best looking level in this game. But other than that fact, it mostly relies on swimming and it looking purty. It's rather unremarkable and was pretty easily finished in actually about 5 minutes. Level 9, it isn't so bad. I mean, it relies on good old bullshit leaps of faith, and all the level design is again a little confusing, but nowhere near as maze-like as the fucking kitchen, or as bullshit as the garage. The end is kind of balls, as you just have to kind of hope there's a platform to get down on, and if you're a dick butt like me and you didn't control the slippery motherfucker Jerry well enough, you'll get a nice middle finger from the developers as you fall to your death. And finally, level 10, what wonders await us? I mean, actually yes, what does await us, because we've been everywhere. We've been into the house, we've been back out of the house. I mean, I thought that was our goal the whole time, to go into the house, you know, to save that stupid little shit Tuffy from Tom the Tickler here. So, where the fuck is this level going to be? And we're just back in the house again. Well, okay, I mean, the level says the bedroom, maybe it'll be... no, okay. Come on, developers, this is by far the laziest you've gotten. It's basically just the last time we're in the house, but with some beds around. That's it. The level itself, well, it's kind of meh. It's not really challenging, but it does take something from the bathroom level, which is to have yet another leap of faith at the end of a level. Thanks for that, guys. Oh, and for good measure, throw Tom in one last time, just to claw your fucking balls and punish you for having the gall to bother getting this far. And that's that, we get a little cutscene. Oh, and well, apparently Tom really did get us back there, okay. Oh, Tuffy's here, he's gonna murder the shit out of Tom once and for all. Oh. And as if it was a particularly shitty episode of the show wrapping up, it even has this nice little outro card. I can give it some credit for putting at least a little effort into the ending, as most games would have probably slapped some text up saying grats or something. But I guess if I was a young kid and I liked the show, this would have been pretty much alright. So, in conclusion, a game that's taken me 16 years to beat. Is it bad? No. It's not that bad, to be honest. It could be a lot worse. It really has its problems. Oh god, does it have its fucking problems. But for the core demographic that it's aimed at, you know, it's not difficult enough or anything like that that they won't be able to complete it or play it properly. And it does at least try to kind of stage itself as an episode of the show, and whether that succeeds or not, you know, isn't really my point. They attempted it at least. So I could have gotten something way fucking better, you know, as my first game on my Game Boy Color, but oh well, this is the one I got. I've completed it now, and I think I can finally move on, review-wise, that is, to something else, maybe on a more powerful system. So I'll see you guys next time.